public property free. We own the public airways. We're the landlords. You're the tenants. You don't pay the Federal Communications Commission a dime. Any one of you pay more for your auto license than the biggest radio and TV stations pay for their FCC license. That's the way they made sure Congress arranged it for them back in 1934. We're not getting facts across on the mass media. We're getting this kind of ideology paid for by mass advertisers. Government doesn't advertise on Rush Limbaugh. Corporations do. And last year he made $38 million. So if we look at the issues from preventable violence and productivity, here's what we begin to learn. We've been to learn that we are now capable of improving the productivity of our natural resources by tenfold. Whether it's energy fuel, or iron, or copper, or whatever. Huge capabilities now in productivity. Amory Lovins, who's a physicist, I'm sure some of you know him, has stated that there are 4 factors of production: money, goods, equipment, people, and nature. And in calculating our economic production and GDP, we just calculate nature out of it. So when we deplete a mine, we don't take that depletion into effect. When we cut a forest, we don't take that depletion into effect. And yet nature does most of our work for us. Nature, for example, the sun already produces most of our livable environment. The sun has never sent us a bill. Nature provides, Lovin said, such free ecosystem services as nutrient cycling, climate stability, atmospheric composition, and biological productivity. The substitutes that are known for only a few of the scores of ecosystem services are generally impractical. He gives an example. Hand-pollinating a world without bees, for example, would be very difficult. In fact, there was an experiment in Arizona by a bunch of people. They had a big bubble, remember that one? It's called Biosphere 2. And they said, what would it cost to produce a living environment in this complete sealed bubble for 8 people? After tens of millions of dollars, they gave up. Just 8 people. That's what nature does for us. Free. When we degrade nature, when we abuse nature, it takes it and it takes it until it turns on its abusers. And in China, 1998, there was a degradation of the habitats around the Yangtze River. And this degradation triggered the Yangtze floods of 1998, which killed 3,700 people, temporarily displaced over 200 million, inundated 20 million hectares of farmland, and cost over $30 billion. China had to implement a logging moratorium and a $12 billion crash program of reforestation. You see these things all over the world occurring. So what is natural capitalism? Natural capitalism refers to our natural resources. Capital, natural capital. And we now have an opportunity to vastly improve the fuel needed to drive your car or heat your home, air conditioning. We all know that. The question is, why isn't it happening faster? If it prevents sickness and other kinds of violence and property damage, if it respects our posterity and our descendants, if it increases productivity, who can be against this? Those who are against it are profiting from waste. Now, if you had a private conversation with the head of an oil company, and you said, you know, we are now going to have 300 mile per gallon motor vehicles. Do you like that? Well, he might say he would like it, especially if it was Earth Day, greenwashing. But he would calculate that that is going to displace a lot of sales. So from the seller's point of view, the more electricity you waste, the more materials you waste, the more fuel you waste, because of the technology you have to buy, gas-guzzling cars, for example, or you just waste, your habits are wasteful. The more they sell, and the more profit they make. Now, when they have more power than you, the seller's support for wasteful economy prevails over your desire for a better deal for your consumer dollar. And when that spills over into Washington, that's what we have. A very biased policy favoring oil, gas, coal, nuclear, with all kinds of tax credits, subsidies, research and development, guarantees, lack of law enforcement against strip miners and so forth. And anything but a level playing field with renewables and efficiency. That's beginning to change. The credits now, you have different solar credits. They expire and then they get reinstated. And there are standards for your appliances. You buy household appliances, they're more efficient, moving slowly in that direction. Because our oil bill is too high, imported from abroad. We're generating trade deficits. Other corporations are saying, what the heck's going on here, you know? The airlines are raising your fees because of the fuel. So you're getting part of industry that's saying, we got to start moving now to greater productivity or sustainability. How long will this go on? Well, it won't go on if we go to the polls without doing our homework. It won't go on until we get indignant, until we have fire in our belly. It's not enough to know what the opportunities are for ourselves and our children in a society that we wouldn't even recognize what we're comparing with today. The constant, desperate attempt to pay the bills. The 1, 2, 3 Walmart-type jobs. The single mother commuting, paying $500 a month daycare, not having enough time with the children. 1/3 of all workers making $8, $9, $10, $10.50 an hour before deductions, Walmart wages. 47 million workers, 50 million people without health insurance. And it goes on and on. We don't need to have any of this. Europe doesn't have a lot of this, Western Europe. Why are we tolerating it? Because we don't have enough fire in our belly. That's why. Because we're in routines. That's why. Because we think it's satisfying to have brilliant denunciations of corporate crooks in Wall Street and then let it go at that. Well, they go to Washington and bail themselves out on our backs, and then they're blocking the proper regulation that Franklin Delano Roosevelt put on the banks, and it worked until 1999, until Clinton deregulated. And then they went crazy with speculation in Wall Street, using pension workers' money and mutual money, looting and draining trillions of dollars, enriching themselves, tanking their own banks and brokerage houses, so that they have to go to Washington for a bailout. And who bails them out? The same people who've been ripped off as pensioners, or people who have mutual funds, or savings, or jobs. 8 million jobs were lost in that collapse in 2008. I was campaigning for president just to try to give an alternative. We had a big rally on Wall Street in October 2008. It wasn't covered by the networks. It wasn't covered by the local TV. We got a 700-word article deep inside the Wall Street, the New York Times. Where are the progressives? Where are the liberals? It all comes down to what we call emotional intelligence. You look back at our history. The great sit-down strikes in Flint and Warren, Michigan. to build the United Auto Workers. Workers were terribly mistreated in the auto companies in the 20s and 30s. And it led to a rise to form the union. And these workers, they struck and they stayed in the plant, and their families would give them food through the windows. So they sat in on the plants. They had no unemployment compensation. They had no food stamps. They had no welfare. They put their entire livelihood and that of their families to form the United Auto Workers, to give them a decent standard of living and a retirement, fire in their belly. You don't see that with UAW leadership today, unfortunately. Rosa Parks, you think she was the only black woman who knew, or black person who knew, that if you get on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama in the 1950s, you go right to the back of the bus, because you're black. She happened to be an experienced civic activist, and so one day she comes on a bus, she sits in the front seat. She's sitting there, and sees a man standing right next to her, and he goes like this. And she said, "I'm just too tired, I'm not going to go." And she was arrested, and that led to the Montgomery bus boycott, and launched, among other sparks, the modern civil rights movement. Now, a lot of people knew what she knew, but she put herself on the line. That young fruit vendor in Tunisia, who day after day the police would take his fruit, sometimes making him carry it to the police car, steal his fruit. He was so humiliated, he immolated himself in the town square in this little village. And that sparked the rallies to overthrow the dictators in Tunisia and Egypt. The first Intifada was started in the 1980s, when an Israeli military vehicle rammed a civilian van in the West Bank, killed 7 people. That wasn't the first time Palestinians died. There's always some spark that does it. And the question is Madison, February, March, is that going to be the spark that some of you participated in? Or is that petering out? Or is that going to come back with recalls of the governor and some Republican legislators? The point is, we have the power. We're not using it. There are 535 men and women in Congress who put their shoes on every day like you and I. There are about 1,500 corporations who get their way again and again with the majority of those 535 senators and representatives. They don't have a single vote. The word corporation doesn't exist in our Constitution. We're the ones that have the vote. Why do we let ourselves be controlled by a few giant